Sabres going to be picking 9th overall in the upcoming NHL draft. Austin, before we get into the list of players available that they could possibly pick with that selection, one, do you want them to keep it or trade it for a top 6 forward, which is probably one of their biggest needs right now?
Yeah. Real quick, I don't know about you. Lottery aside, I actually enjoyed the production, like the live drawing and stuff. I thought that was relatively cool.
Yeah, it's nice to see how the process actually plays out.
Yeah, the NHL doesn't get a lot of credit, but I think that was actually I've had a lot of people complaining. I thought in terms of trading or keeping the pick, I flip-flop back and forth. Because I think two things. One, they don't really need to add another top 10 prospect.
Got a lot in the hopper already.
Right? But also, this draft class is relatively weak, according to most scouts that you talk, once you get past like the top 3, 4. So it's like, all right, I would like them to trade the pick. I don't know what else needs to be added with that number 9 to get the true piece that you need. I don't know how much teams are going to be wanting that number 9 pick if the draft class is quote unquote weaker after the top 3. So it's kind of a really bad situation for the Sabres. But I would lean towards what I want them to do is still trying to find a way to turn it into an asset. What I think they're going to do, I think they're going to stay at 9 and take a prospect because I don't know. Like I said, Kevin Adams has yet to act like he's worried about losing his job. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just says, hey, I can develop. This guy will develop in our system here. Probably thinks he's still going to be here.
Trade down, trade up.
I mean, it just doesn't happen all that often in the NHL. There's no point in trading down. Because again, like I just said, the draft class gets weaker.
You want to pick up an extra second?
Maybe. I don't know. Like I said, worst case scenario, either package it with, like, try to remember what year it was. Whenever Ekman Larson went from Arizona to Vancouver, I think it was like Ekman Larson to Vancouver for it was Ekman Larson and Garland. So that was it can be done. Like you can get effect, but it just doesn't feel like you're gonna get teams clamoring to trade for a pick where the general opinion of this class is not like it's a weaker draft class. If you talk to people smarter than me, and you know me, like I'm pretty involved in the scouting community, and a lot of people I talk to just said it's not worth it. So we'll see. I think if the right trade comes, like I said, if the right trade comes for any piece, whether it's 9th overall or anything else in the Sabres roster, the dude better. But I wouldn't be I would be shocked if they're not picking at 9th.
So you'd be shocked if some team came calling for the 9th pick for a top 6?
Depending on the forward. It depends on your definition of a top 6 forward, right? Like,
right.
Could I see like
a guy with term that a team wants to get rid of?
Yeah, I'm trying to. If you remember the trade that
Corey Schneider for Bo Horvat that got.
Yeah. I was trying to think of that one. I was trying to think like the last time the Sabres were involved with the top 10 pick being traded, it was like Matt Murray nixed it. Matt Murray was going to come to the Sabres with like the Sens 7th overall pick for the Sabres 10th overall pick. So like, it's even that like how big of a trade is that actually? It's not like they just don't seem to be that big of a deal. But like if a team like you're not getting like a Jason Robertson for the 9th overall pick, you know what I mean? Like you're not getting like that true blue impact top 6 forward, but could you get a 28-year-old version of Jason Zucker for 9th? Probably, but I don't know if that's worth it. Also, I don't even like, when we get into that later in the episode, I also don't think top 6 forward is necessarily the top of my list for what I'd be going after. But again, if any trade comes their way, Adams has to be on the phone and be thinking.
So our second poll there, what should the Sabres do with their first round pick? According to the Twitter poll, 75% would be trade for a roster player, and then tied with select a forward and trade up into the top 5. Trade down and pick up more was 0%. So I guess the fans are with you that trade for a roster player if that deal is available. Just good luck finding somebody that would want to do that, like you said, given that this draft class may not be looked at as impactful. There are still some solid players. A lot of OHL players this year, Austin, has been incredible. We could have 3 of the top 5 players taken from the OHL, which is great for us, covering the league. But it's, from the general consensus, what would be available there, what teams are willing to get rid of. You look at teams like Nashville that would probably love to get rid of like a contract like Jonathan Marchessault because he hasn't worked out there. I think him to the Leafs makes a lot of sense, given if they're going to lose Marner for $14 million. So, maybe if those teams, if there's a team that's looking to go after a Marner or one of these other top free agents, maybe they're trying to unload a guy that makes a little bit of money, maybe in his late 20s. Would the Sabres even want that, knowing that they have some big contracts that they're going to have to be giving out to Peterkas, and, Tuch's going to need a contract if he's back in a year. So, it just seems more likely, as you said, that Kevin Adams is probably just going to stay at 9 and pick somebody.
Yeah, the name that kind of jumped off the page to me is like, he's got trade protection. Pittsburgh has Rickard Rakell. He's got trade protection. They have Brian Rust, who I actually think would be a great add. He loses his trade protection, but it's also like, I don't know, am I trading the 9th overall pick for Brian Rust? I'd probably be okay with it, but I know that's not exactly the player that people would want for the 9th pick. But I also think we have to realize the 9th overall pick doesn't hold the value that like it does in an NFL draft.
And also because the Sabres have so many prospects, we saw them move Matt Savoy, who was a first round pick for a third line center, and Ryan McLeod
which
has actually worked out well with how well McLeod played this.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, like, it's just, if the right deal is there, you got to move it. But if you're, like you said, we'll see. I am firmly in the camp of I want them to trade it, but I am firmly in the camp of while wanting that
right.
I'm not gonna do what I did last year, expecting this big, then on day 2 of the draft to move that he's back.
We'll look at this here with the mock draft here, and again, I've got it up on the screen. Friend of the show, Stephen Ellis from dailyfaceoff.com, just going to quickly go over who he has on the list and get Austin's thoughts on who he would like at number 9. We're going to go from 7 to 12 there with the area because, like Austin mentioned, after the top 3, 4, 5, it could pretty much be a crapshoot depending on who's available. Brady Martin from the Sioux Greyhounds, Jackson Smith from the Tri-City Americans, Victor Eklund is who Steven has the Sabres taking there with the pick there, with the 9th overall pick, right winger. 10th, Jake O'Brien from the Brantford Bulldogs, a center. 11th, Kayshawn Aitchison, defenseman from the Barrie Colts. And Radim Murka from the Seattle Thunderbirds, the right-handed defenseman. And Carter Bear, center left wing from the Everett Silvertips. Austin, what are your thoughts on those, just maybe that group of players? You assume that like a Caleb Desnoyers, with being in the Memorial Cup, he's going to skyrocket up a little bit, possibly into the top 5. But who do you like in that area of that the Sabres are picking?
Yeah, so Desnoyers is my draft crush. Unfortunately, I think he's playing out of the Sabres range, especially because they dropped down 2 spots, but I really like him. I think, if they go with Eklund or O'Brien or Martin, there's no wrong choice there. I think the thing that makes the most sense, if he's there, is Radim Murka from Seattle. 6'6", 215-pound defenseman, right shot. One thing that they desperately need is a potential top 4 right shot defenseman. Sabres fans, sorry, not all Sabres fans, but the ones who don't necessarily like Owen Power probably aren't going to be super fond of Murka either, because he is not the bruiser, big body defenseman. He's a lot closer to a puck mover. But I really, really, really do like Murka a lot. I think he fills your biggest need while also not being a total reach at 9th. But if they come away with an O'Brien or a Brady Martin or, an Eklund, I think those are all fine choices. I could see them, if he's there, falling in love with Roger McQueen from the Brandon Wheat Kings, because he's just so big and is so toolsy as a forward. But to me, I think there's, like you said, there's some decent options. Unfortunately, none of these options are going to pull a Zach Benson and make the team right away. So that's why we're talking for people who want the pick to be traded. I feel you, because the player's not going to probably make an impact for this coaching staff. But I think Radim Murka would probably be best case scenario, just in terms of filling a need, and he's a good prospect.
So you'd obviously lean more towards D than forward.
Depending on the forward, like I really do like Brady Martin a lot. He seems to be on the rise publicly. I don't know how NHL scouts are feeling about him. I know, again, Bob McKenzie kind of still seems to be the litmus test for scouts or scouting rankings, because he does talk to these NHL scouts in terms of what NHL teams are thinking, not in terms of who's actually the best players. But Martin or O'Brien feel really, really solid. But I think if you can marry a need with a player in that range, that is best case scenario. And the Sabres desperately need a right shot defenseman who projects to be a top 4 in the NHL, because they have some decent right shot prospects. None of them project to be a top 4.
And they've got too many left-handed shot D right now, that like with the Powers and the Byrams and the Dahlins, like it's pretty much set in stone. Yeah, the power. We've got more on the Byram thing a little bit after, but
yes, they definitely have, the Dahlin, the Samuelson, the Power. Bernard Docker looks good as a right shot defenseman, but also,
does he project to be top 4?
Probably not. But like I said, that's where I kind of land with Murka. But I think if they end up with any of the 4, it's relative.